We all know that in the city, Chesa Boudin was recalled, and our guest was appointed district attorney and has made some changes. She really was carried in on a wave of popularity. I say that because one could look at the way the vote went down as a mandate for real change. And our guest has brought some of that change to the DA's office, and we want to ask her about other changes and also, frankly, her frustrations with the office and what's ahead. So please welcome her now. Brooke Jenkins, everybody. Hello, District Attorney Brooke Jenkins. Thank you for being with us, first of all.
Hi there, and thank you so much. It's been a while.
It's been a while, that's right. You were in our studios talking about things before the recall, actually. And if you have questions for Brooke Jenkins, please put them in the chat. And you can also email us at KGO Radio Oh, no, it's not that. That's the old address. The Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. You know, Brooke, they closed up the whole radio station, our old radio station, KGO, as you may be aware.
I just learned that. That's sad to me, actually.
It is sad. I mean, I think it was a good independent voice, but a lot of people, thousands, have come here and want to hear from you now, and many of them were regular KGO listeners. So before we get into some specifics, because you have some pretty aggressive postures you've taken toward drug dealing in the city and toward some of the crime that's afflicted the city for a while now, and you really have been a strong victims advocate. I want to ask you about how you think the texture of things in the city is going relative to your posture toward some of these issues.
You know, I will say that overwhelmingly people have been extremely supportive, and that is all over the city. One thing that I've tried to do since taking over is to be in as many neighborhoods around San Francisco as I can be in order to talk to residents and business owners. And the level of appreciation for the change, for the course correction has been, alarming to me, quite frankly. People seem to be ready for positive change in San Francisco. People are fed up with the amount of crime. They're fed up with, a leadership in the DA's office that wasn't willing to protect them or to hold these people accountable. And so now they are very appreciative of this change.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I would think that you wouldn't be surprised. I mean, obviously you came in, as I say, on a wave of anger and frustration that people feel in the city. One of the things you've talked about is the fact, I'll just take on the drug dealing that has really been a scourge of the city. You've talked about the fact that you want murder charges for some of these drug dealers. That's been somewhat controversial, hasn't it?
Yes, I think the media has tried to make it controversial. Every group that I've talked to has been very appreciative of it. When I'm down in the Tenderloin, they are extremely thankful for my willingness to step up and say that and to implement that policy in our office. And so I think people are trying to make it more of an issue than what the residents, quite frankly, make of it. They want some serious consequences for the amount of deaths that are taking place.
I think you're probably right. And based on some of the chats that we've gotten into already, I mean, people seem to back that completely. It seems as though there hasn't been the spine in the DA's office, is the sense I'm getting, to follow through on this. So has there been pushback, or will that happen? Are you, in other words, going to prosecute some drug dealers on murder charges?
So the potential certainly is there. And I've made it clear, if you are linked, if the sale of fentanyl by you is linked to someone's death, then we will consider filing murder charges. We have to remember, right, that there are two categories of people who end up dying from fentanyl overdose. It's a category. The first category are those who knowingly take fentanyl, who are addicted specifically to fentanyl and overdose on it. But then we have a whole subset of people who think they're taking something else, think they're buying a different drug, and all the while are being provided something laced with fentanyl or replaced with fentanyl. And that is a large group of people who are dying from thinking they're taking Percocet, from thinking they're taking cocaine, all the while being sold something that is lethal. Just one dose, one pill kills them. And so we have to take a more aggressive approach to save these lives.
John Daly, who is our producer, he has been the victim of crime in the city. It seems as though everybody who lives in the city has a crime story of one sort or another. It might just be a smash and grab, which is one of those things now that, wherever you park in San Francisco, you sort of do this calculation. This is true, by the way, in Oakland, San Jose, et cetera. I mean, it seems as though there's an epidemic of this kind of thing. Even in Marin, it's true. But in the city, it's really almost become something that we have a reputation for now. And John, I know you want to throw in, and I welcome you into this conversation, but what can be done to affect change in the area of those smash and grabs and these crimes that are essentially, you might consider them lower grade street crimes typically?
Yeah, so I really think it comes down to policing. We have to have more police present at the time that these crimes occur, right? So many people ask me, look, my car was broken into. It took 5 hours for the police to show up and to come take my report. And I try to explain to them that unfortunately, so many of the auto burglary crimes happen in the middle of the night or even in the middle of the day when nobody sees it for several hours. And so unfortunately, if there's no actual evidence, right, of who committed that crime, it's highly unlikely that the police are going to be able to do anything about it. They have to actually be there to really almost catch the person in the act or as they're trying to flee. And that requires more policing, more police in reality, right? We know that they're understaffed. We need people, right, to catch those thieves who are coming out of Walgreens at the time that they run out with that bag full of stuff, to be right there rather than us, try to report it and see what happens, a day or two later.
Well, that's something that. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Hi, Brooke. It's John. A big concern among neighbors are the break-ins of garages. Yeah. And the feeling that the police do not prioritize that. How do you handle these crimes that are hitting homeowners?
Yeah, and that is a residential burglary. That's one of the most serious crimes that there are. And I know that for a period of time, the police felt that their work was disregarded, that these cases were being thrown away by the DA's office, that there was a lack of accountability. And I have tried to really turn the tide on that to make it clear to them that we are back to being a DA's office that prioritizes public safety and that will ensure accountability so that they feel more motivated as they go out to take these reports and to investigate these cases. One of the big things that they need is security footage when things are happening while people are asleep or while people are not home. They need evidence of who actually committed this crime, evidence of what the getaway vehicle looks like. And so what really helps is if people have cameras, on their garages, on their homes, if your neighbor has a camera across the street, to go ask them to preserve that footage so that it can be provided to the police.
And it's just a follow-up question. When I was attacked in the Mission District, actually like the first day that I moved to the Dolores Park area at 8 a.m. in the morning, the police were great. They couldn't catch the guy. I was in a bit of a haze, so I wasn't able to properly identify the guy. So I couldn't have a solid identification. But they told me that these guys were repeat offenders and that they were on meth. So I just want to point that out first. But secondly, in another case, I reported a crime in the Panhandle where an electric bike that was parked was being stolen, and the guy was in full hamburger outfit, all in black with a black bag with his tools, drilling into the bike. Right? I reported it. The police did sneak up on him in their vehicle, but they just talked to him and let him go. And I've seen that multiple times. I've lost count of the number of times I have reported crime in the city over the last couple of years.
Wait a minute. They talked to a guy who was in full.
Yes, and he had tools and he was
full
stealing the
robbery
bike.
costume.
They just talked to him, and I'm imagining that's because they knew that Chesa probably wasn't going to do anything about it. But I have reported similar crimes, and during that period of time, over and over again, I think I called in the last year 911 12 times. And I don't think the police felt during that period of time that these were worth going after.
I can tell you for certain that they felt as though nothing would happen. And it doesn't, it doesn't excuse not doing your job as a police officer, but you could imagine how demoralized they have felt to watch people that they've arrested multiple times over back out onto the street where they're not even informed by the DA's office, but where they're just driving by and they see the guy they just arrested 24 hours prior back out doing the same thing again. And so it makes them question, right? Is it worth it? Is it worth our time? Is it worth any risk that it poses to our safety, to our careers, right? If somebody accuses us of something. And so they in turn threw their hands up. And so I've tried to go around to the stations. I've already gone to 5 district stations to talk to the patrol officers at each station and say, look, we're back to being a partner. We're back to doing our jobs. So please feel empowered to do yours, because we can only achieve this mission of public safety together.
And one of the things that I think informed that attitude, if I can use that word, that the cops might have had, was this weird relationship they had with the last DA, Chesa, and the idea that he was prioritizing misconduct on the part of the cops instead of prioritizing lawlessness in the city. And I think that was really a problem that he had. He couldn't, it didn't seem as though he could walk that line effectively. You talked about, in other words, his relationship with one big part of law enforcement in the city was a bad one. You seem to, based on everything I've read, I know you just met with cops, and as you said, you just alluded to it, but even about a misconduct on the part of the cops and about how it's going to be handled from your office, you understand that there has to be a relationship there. It seems that and that relationship has to improve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to have that relationship, just as you pointed out, it doesn't mean that we forsake our obligation and duty to prosecute police officers who engage in misconduct. But when you do that fairly and ethically in the right way, they are supportive of those, who wear the uniform, who use excessive force or who act illegally, being held accountable. They don't have an issue with that. They want it done right under the right circumstances and of course fairly. But we have a job to do that involves partnership with them. And so, what I've tried to do is to really emphasize to them that we're back to being that partner. We want to be a great partner. We want to work with them in any way that we can. And that our biggest role in this, right, is when they pass us the baton, meaning they give us a case that's investigated well, correctly, et cetera, that we're going to ensure that there's accountability. That's what they want to know, right? Because they are up against a lot when they go out and they risk their physical safety, amongst other things. They don't want to feel like it's for nothing.
We're talking to Brooke Jenkins, the San Francisco District Attorney, also here with John Daly, who has been the victim of crime in the city multiple times. He's also broken up a couple of crimes, which is sort of interesting as he saw them going down in the city.
I'm kind of an unofficial deputy.
Batman.
Yeah, he is.
I also pick up nails on my walk home. So
yeah, there is that. I don't know if
I'm trying to get my karma points going.
Yeah, I don't know if the DA's office handles that sort of thing, but Prop 47. Is being asked about. I'm seeing it on where is it? Immortal Tiger asks, Prop 47.
And Karen as well asks, should it be rolled back?
Yeah, should it be rolled back? That's related to the changing of, I guess, the class of crime is the way you would call it, right? Misdemeanor to felony, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so, I think as most of us could understand, when that was enacted, it was to make sure that we weren't saddling people with felonies for what we consider to be low-level nonviolent offenses. And that's the right way to think, of course. I think what we missed was sort of some smaller things that were going to play out over time that made prosecution a bit hamstrung, quite frankly. One of the main things that most people don't even know, what a lot of the discussion has been about with respect to Prop 47 is the amount that's stolen, right? That everybody knows it went from 450 to 950 for it to qualify as a felony. But one of the bigger issues that we've actually had as a DA's office is the fact that it took off the table the ability to sort of elevate multiple convictions for misdemeanors into having a future charge be a felony. So it used to be that if somebody had 3 prior petty theft convictions as misdemeanors, that if they continue to engage in that behavior, that we could graduate or elevate a future charge to a felony. Prop 47 played a role in taking that ability away. And so when you couple that with the 950, we're in a landscape where it's really difficult to hold these repeat offenders accountable in any real way. And then we have a secondary layer, which is that over time, most of our misdemeanor crimes have statutorily become eligible for diversion. And so even if we go in and we argue sometimes that somebody shouldn't go into diversion, the misdemeanor offenses are, you're arguing against a statute that says that they're eligible. And so we've had to really arm our lawyers with the arguments that you have to go in and make about someone's suitability. They may be eligible, but are they suitable for diversion? But there's a huge conflux of a number of issues that have made prosecution of misdemeanors, particularly these theft crimes, a problem.
You talk about that, and it really brings 2 things to mind. One, what we were talking about before, which is the relationship with the cops to enforce it. That is to say, they endure some of the same frustrations that San Franciscans do, with what you're talking about, with recidivism and essentially the same crimes being perpetrated over and over. And also judges. I saw a piece, it might have been a couple of months ago, where you were kind of getting into it. There was a judge that was sort of pushing back on your general policies, because your policies are, it would seem anyway, some of them victim-oriented. You're a victim's advocate, it would seem, in ways at least that victims haven't seen under Chesa Boudin. At least that, I think, is a reasonable take on it. And clearly there are others who might share that take. I mean, talking about in the electorate. So when you talk about having to balance all of these things and all of these quite nuanced and layered situations, judges are a part of this as well. So when you go to the court and you tell your attorneys to advocate for one thing or another of the sort you're talking about, like an upgrade in charges, you do need cooperation from that court, don't you?
Yeah, we need them in certain respects. And so one of the main areas where they have impact is when somebody is released at the outset of their case. So at arraignment, we make an argument about custody status. And that argument, right, is what weighs upon a judge to then decide what their ruling is going to be. Either somebody's released back out into the public or they're not. And for 2.5 years, they really have not functioned in an adversarial system where the DA's office was making a public safety argument with respect to somebody's custody status. They essentially had 2 public defenders coming in and saying, we concede right to somebody's released in most cases. And so now they're being confronted with real public safety arguments as to whether or not somebody should be released in certain types of cases. The other area is, like I said, is diversion in the misdemeanor courts. And then, of course, sentencing after a trial. That's where judges really come in, and we need them to be, good stewards of the law.
If you have text messages, you can text them.
Why don't you just text it?
District Attorney Brooke Jenkins, and you can also put them in the chat, and we'll pass them along. Also on the email, I got an email, several actually. I'm just trying to kind of wade through them, and I'll get to that in a second. But just because you're talking about what happens with the judges and releasing and this kind of thing, I want to just relate quickly a conversation I had with somebody from Silicon Valley who was, of course, pitching a technology that is different than the ankle bracelet, and was saying, why can't everybody who is involved in the court system, misdemeanor or awaiting trial or whatever, be fitted for? And then he showed me this thing he's working on, because it's as you might imagine, as I say, it's a Silicon Valley related thing. And he's got a little sort of unobtrusive, it would fit on the arm, almost like a watch. Looks like a Fitbit, really. Why aren't they using these in greater numbers, was his point. That way you guarantee they'll show up for trial also, and this is his big point, and I wanted to get your take on it, that when there's another crime and you can track their whereabouts because of GPS, put them at the scene of that crime, that then would lead to their potential holding in a jail situation, as opposed to letting them go out on their own recognizance or whatever the legal terminology is. How do you feel about, applying some sort of additional technology that way?
I think whatever we can find that would allow people, like I said, who aren't our most dangerous offenders to be out, right, still operating in society, but with the ability for us to make sure that they're functioning in a productive manner, not, committing future crime, that we know where they're at, that would be great. Currently, our ankle monitoring system is one that is designed to tell us somebody's specific location, so long as they don't cut it off, which it does happen from time to time. But generally, we're able to track their location based on that GPS device.
Who gets one of those, Brooke?
So there's sort of there's an assessment that the court does. Are you somebody who should be just released with no sort of conditions, right? We just trust that you won't break the law while your case is open. We have people who then are fitted with a GPS monitoring device that the court thinks require a little bit more supervision. We then have people who have that device and also are placed on house arrest as sort of an extra layer. And then we have detention in the jail while the case is open. So those are sort of the layers.
Fabulous producer John Daly, did you have something you wanted to ask her?
Fabulous producer John Daly.
Yep.
Yeah, Brooke, could you speak to the expanded use of cameras, especially those from private businesses? I'm thinking Union Square, et cetera, and how that benefits prosecution?
Yes. And so I was a big proponent of giving police real-time access to this camera footage. And that's because we're in a day and age where jurors want to see video footage. They're used to seeing that on Instagram and on YouTube and on their, on the news. And so, to walk into a courtroom without video evidence, you're already starting from behind as a prosecutor. It also really, quite frankly, enables us to know, do we have the right person? One, and is there evidence that a crime actually occurred? I will tell you that just recently, I had the opportunity to evaluate some video evidence of a situation that ended up, once we watched it, exonerating somebody because it was very clear that they had acted in self-defense. And I will tell you, there were no other witnesses to this crime who had come forward. And so without that video footage, it could have very well ended up with this individual being charged for this crime. But because there was this footage, we were able to look and say, wow, this person was acting in self-defense. And so for each case that it helps and assists our prosecution, there's equally a case where it potentially allows us to exonerate somebody. And that's why it's so essential.
No, it makes total sense. It would seem to me that, as for all the reasons that you just articulated, that you want that. Just our last few minutes with Brooke Jenkins, District Attorney of San Francisco. I just am looking at so many different questions. Here's a repetitive theme, which is from Catherine, who texts in, I love live theater, but I don't want to go to San Francisco anymore, even in the afternoon, because of my concern for personal safety. I feel unsafe going around. There's a lot of that. Jason from the Mission District. Seems like the city is turning a blind eye to the obvious bicycle chop shops that are all over the city. Do you see that, Brooke Jenkins? Is there a blind eye being turned towards some of these things that we know about?
I think there has been, yes. I mean, I've passed those chop shops myself coming through the city. I see a lot that's been going on and that our office has effectively decriminalized. And to the extent that the DA's office says we have a blanket policy of not prosecuting something, there's no reason for the police to make those arrests. The cases are going to be discharged, right? We're not gonna move forward. And so what my position has been as the district attorney, I don't have the right to choose what the laws of the state of California are. I don't get to decide that I'm going to ignore certain laws and observe others. We have a duty, and that's to enforce all the laws. And so I've communicated that with Chief Scott in the police department, that we are not going to have selective prosecution. We're going to make sure that we prosecute all crime in San Francisco to the extent that it needs to be. And like I've said, accountability can come in many different forms. It doesn't always mean jail. For some people, it's a vocational training program that they're required to complete so that they are in a position after their case to get a job. For some people, it's drug treatment. But we can't allow the chaos that's going on our streets and continue to turn that blind eye.
In our last couple of minutes with Brooke Jenkins, I wanted to, and by the way, if you have an email, you can send it now. I'll try to, shoehorn you in here at the end. But
I've received a lot of positive
hey, Mark, could you
letters.
ask Brooke, while all the neighborhoods deserve safety, do you have any plans to protect tourist areas? Again, this is a little tough because, well, Brooke, you can explain what you have control over and what you don't. But anyway, I live in the Fisherman's Wharf area, and I've had to help foreign tourists call both the police and their car rental agencies after their cars have been broken into and all their luggage stolen after running into Ghirardelli to get some souvenir chocolate. I mean, literally, that was the only thing that they were doing, apparently. Shouldn't there be a little additional police presence in the tourist areas? That is the primary business of San Francisco. Thanks, Kate. I wonder if you can speak to that. By the way, if we had $1 for every one of those, we could, fund a program in the city. With so many anecdotes take on that tone. Your thoughts and what do you have control over?
So, I don't have control over policing, but what I will say is that they are almost 600 officers short. Every single district station, with the exception of the Tenderloin station, are short about 25 plus officers. It makes a huge difference in how they're able to keep rotating patrols around the city. Of course, Fisherman's Wharf and other tourist areas are a priority because we want to protect San Francisco's economy, which heavily depends upon tourism, and at the same time balance that with the need for our residents. And we have some communities really struggling with gun violence and other things. And so they're doing their best is what I can tell you. They're really trying to incentivize officers to work overtime. But thankfully, the Board of Supervisors and the mayor did agree that they would increase the budget for SFPD to make their pay more competitive. Who would have thought that SFPD was making less than BART police? You wouldn't believe it.
And now it's a remarkable thing. And it's funny, we talk about this all the time. We talk about two things. We talk about the fact that the number of cops is down. I mean, really, dangerously low if you're trying to increase those patrols in the city. And we talk about firefighters just in California generally. Those numbers are way down as well. How would you, this is, again, not your area. Sorry to have to hit you with questions about things you don't necessarily have direct control over, but nonetheless, I'd really like your take. Is it money with enough of a budgetary increase you could bring the SFPD up to where it needs to be in terms of staffing? Is that the answer, or are there other things as well?
Well, that certainly plays a role. It's something that I'm up against in my office as well. We don't pay the same as Santa Clara County or San Mateo County, and so we lose lawyers all the time to those counties. So it's a factor. But when you couple that, the disparity in pay with then what appeared to be a hostility towards police, not only, San Francisco, we're never going to be police lovers. That's not us. But I think there was an overwhelming hostility that was also embodied by the DA's office that sort of put people second guess. Is that really where I would want to become a police officer? And so they've been able to, if I am going to do it, I'm going to apply to somewhere where I'll get paid more at the very least. And so I think we have to change that climate. And I really do think we've turned a corner on that in San Francisco. Everywhere that I go, I don't hear we don't want police. I hear, why aren't there more police? And like I said, I've tried to foster an environment where, yes, we will demand that policing is done the right way, but that is supportive of the work that they do, because it is essential to this city's function.
Such a pleasure to have you join us. I very much appreciate your time. Also, the difficulty of your job. I think there was a sense that somehow you could just put the bat beam up, recall the last DA, and all of a sudden the city was going to get better. I think there's that sort of desperation on the part of San Franciscans. You can only do so much, but it seems as though your initial steps have really been aggressive. So I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you'll come visit again.
Thank you. Of course, as most people know, I have an election just 3 weeks away. And so I'm trying to make sure that we can stay on course and not go backwards, because the recall was not it. We could certainly go backwards if we don't.
And full disclosure, you have my vote.
Oh, thank you.
There you go. All right. Wow. I think on this crew, you're very well thought of. Wouldn't worry about you. You don't have to canvass this show. We're pretty much on board.
As a native San Franciscan, I just want to thank you for doing something.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
We're gonna get it done. We're gonna make sure things get cleaned up.
John, is your love letter to Brooke Jenkins over now?
I'll follow up in email.
All right. Brooke Jenkins, everybody. Thanks, Brooke Jenkins.
Thank you, Mark.
Good
You're
luck.
awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
really
Brooke.
cool. Wow. She's
That
the
was
real
fun.
thing, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the conversations I've had with her off the air, she is the real deal. And I 100% support her.